June. It is lake season in northern Minnesota, and I'll be totally honest here. There have been times in my life that by this point in the summer, between the Yag bombs, rum and cokes, and copious amounts of beer, I could feel my liver crying. I think most people know that alcohol causes cirrhosis of the liver, fatty liver, and eventually, if left unattended, can lead to death. But I think what a lot of people don't know is that health officials the world over are now sounding the alarm on what they're calling the new epidemic of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Now, I'm not a biochemistry major. Really, Brianna? What a shock. But I am a foodie, and in that capacity, I do know how they make foie gras. If you're not familiar with that, they take a duck or a goose and they basically forcefully overfeed them calories, and it makes their liver fatty, which is considered a delicacy in some places. The same thing happens to humans when we overconsume calories. Junk food in general, refined sugar, and cholesterol in particular. For example, in a study of 9,000 Americans followed for 13 years, they found that after subtracting HDL from total cholesterol, none, N-O-N-E, none of the people that they followed who had a value under 130 developed fatty liver disease. How do we prevent fatty liver then? Well, I generally try to avoid lists of rules like do not touch, do not eat, because I found that for me, it just makes me want something more, which is what Paul was talking about in his letter to the Romans. But it's really impossible to talk about liver health without making an avoid list. Things that are bad for our liver: alcohol, too much cholesterol, too much saturated fat, over-consuming calories, period. Which is probably why junk food is so closely associated, because junk food makes us want more junk food, which leads to the overconsumption of calories. Like how they get foie gras. Yummy. Okay, so what can we focus on adding? What can we put on our to-do list? Basically, a Mediterranean diet. And by Mediterranean diet, I mean the real Mediterranean diet, not the kind that I made up in my imagination that was just a rationalization to pack away a bottle of Merlot every night. The real Mediterranean diet, characterized by whole grains, legumes, beans, nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables, some fish, meat a few times a month. Basically, real food. Now here's part 2 of honesty. For those dealing with addiction, whether it's to alcohol or junk food, those changes may seem insurmountable. You can make a list of avoid and a list of to do, but if a person is dealing with addiction, either of those things are going to be very hard to do. I can't speak for others, of course, but for me, dealing with addiction started with asking God for help. If you're interested in the rest of that story, it will be up on the YouTube channel later this week. But for now, here is to our liver health. Yesterday, I talked about how a Mediterranean diet is a good eating pattern for preventing and reversing fatty liver disease. But is there anything in specific we can eat to speed up the process? Yes. And this is really good news because it's ginger, baby. In a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, researchers gave a control group 1 teaspoon of ginger a day for 12 weeks. And they found that just that 1 teaspoon of ground ginger a day resulted in significant decrease in liver inflammatory markers and a drop in liver fat. There have been so many studies showing ginger to improve liver function that in February of 2022, a group of nutrition researchers in Iran conducted a meta-analysis where they combine all sorts of studies on a certain topic, and they concluded that, quote, ginger administration reduces fatty liver disease by several mechanisms, including insulin-sensitive effects, stimulating antioxidant enzymes, reducing free radicals, reducing hepatic fat content. That's a pretty good bang for your buck. Well, I mean, it's even less than a buck because a teaspoon of ginger is like 5 cents. The easiest way I've found is to mix it with tea or a little fresh squeezed orange juice and take it like a spicy shot. But honestly, if I had to eat curry every single day to get my ginger in that way, I would not be upset. Okay, you can tell the kinds of things I regularly look at on the internet when YouTube suggested I check out a study involving liver health and oatmeal. I'll save the juicy details for a future video, but suffice it to say, when I started this health journey, the state of my liver was at best questionable. Incidentally, one of the foods I've leaned into as a regular part of my new eating pattern is oatmeal, mostly because I actually like it and it's cheap. So I was excited to learn this week about this study. Researchers at the Institute of Medicine in Taiwan took equal numbers of men and women with fatty liver and split them into 2 groups. One group got a serving of oatmeal every day, and the other group a whole grain concoction that looked and tasted like oatmeal but was not. And check this out. Almost 90% of the subjects in the daily oatmeal group had an improvement in liver function. There's a lot more that goes into liver health and detox than a daily serving of oatmeal, but considering that one serving of oatmeal costs about 45 cents, more good news in the quest for liver health. At least it's good news if you love coffee as much as I do. Several different epidemiological and population studies have showed an association between coffee intake and decreased rates of liver cancer. Not only that, but now clinical studies have shown it's not just an association, but coffee specifically, the sweet spot is about 3 cups a day, is good for the liver. For example, 40 patients with chronic hepatitis C were randomized into 2 groups, and the group that consumed 4 cups of coffee a day for 30 days had a reduction in oxidative damage to the liver. In the Rotterdam study of 2,424 participants, the consumption of herbal tea and daily consumption of 3 or more cups of coffee was related to the presence of lower liver stiffness and found an overall protective effect of coffee on established liver disease. Now, unfiltered coffee can raise blood pressure, so we stick to good old-fashioned filtered drip coffee. But it was nice to know that a habit that I had no intention of giving up anyway is actually good for me. I'll drink to that.